what is coffee to you?
It's just a beverage that you enjoy.
Just a beverage.
Just a beverage that you enjoy. That's the way I look at it. That's, I did mention that coffee is overrated. Coffee business is overrated. It's not. It's just a beverage that you enjoy. That's it. That's all there is.
Cool. Thank you very much. It was great talking to you.
Thank you. And I hope no controversial answers by me. And if they are, you can filter them out.
From the culturally rich lands of Delhi to the busy urban landscape of Chennai, we have been drinking a lot of coffee in India. With a very dense and diverse market, we often see many people preferring to drink a cappuccino made from coffee beans that arrive from Italy without realizing that some of these beans probably have been shipped from India just during the last harvest. While we have been exporting coffee overseas for a very long time, the demand for a good cup of coffee has been brewing inside India as well. Over the years, our multi-diverse culture has grown and accommodated cafes, roasters, home brewers, and coffee farmers who do not fear to experiment with their crops. But finding that special cup of coffee has been difficult with people turning a blind eye to the revolution happening within this cup. To be specific, the Indian specialty coffee industry has been easily overlooked for a very long time now. With people in the south preferring their coffee with a little chicory and perhaps some sugar, while people in the north claiming espressos and instant coffee on the go. The definition of good coffee blurs away. On top of it, understanding something as intricate as specialty coffee fails to happen. Why is knowing about specialty coffee important at all? Is there a definition of specialty coffee that exists unanimously? And why is it important at all to know about the coffee in general? Why does it matter to know what happens before you take that sip?
What is, in your understanding, specialty coffee?
Yeah, so there are many people who define it differently. This term has been floating around, I guess, since the mid 1970s around the world. But at a very high level, it's described as the highest grade of coffee which is possible, and it is also to do with the single estates, the single origin, where it is grown. And the climates under which it is grown, all of it to result in a potentially great cup of coffee, and this potentially great cup of coffee is very, very important. So there are now organizations like the SCA, earlier it was SCAE from Europe and then US, which put scores to define what a specialty coffee is. But again, broadly, the idea is to define a potentially good coffee, but then this potentially good coffee to become actually a great brewed drink is a lot to do with the way it is preserved, the way it is supplied right up to where it is roasted, how it is roasted, how it is ground, and then finally, obviously, how it is brewed.
Specialty, I think, has got certain protocols, certain norms, which a consumer may not understand. But then the buyer understands that very well. For him, specialty is norms, is a protocol. You have to prepare it in a certain way. I have to use a certain format for evaluation. I look for certain nuances. I look for certain attributes. And that is really scientific, if you ask me.
Okay, so if I have to explain it to a customer, I always go the logical route of the cupping scores. So I always tell them that anything that cups high on a cupping score, which is 85 and above, I would consider that coffee specialty coffee.
Okay, so the question comes is, if you look at SEA's definitions, they have 4 points for qualifying to be a specialty. By virtue of that, most of our coffees are.
Correct.
Unfortunately, what I see is we only use one parameter, score.
Correct.
Which is not true.
Correct.
There is a lot more to it. That's one. The second thing is I also believe what's nice to you may not be nice to me.
Correct.
So the scoring is applicable when you have a large scope of coffee and you're trying to derive a mean average and then see what sits above it.
What is a specialty coffee according to you?
Specialty coffee is coffee that cups above 80, so like that's pretty simple. I think specialty coffee as a company is we want to make sure we're sustainably sourcing from a farm. We're really interested, so a lot of farms will send us now instant messages or emails and say, hey, I do specialty coffee, and we go through the whole gamut, whether it's species, altitude, terroir, processing methods. So like specialty coffee from us isn't just getting a coffee onto the cupping table and tasting it, it's all the knowledge beforehand.
So what I think specialty coffee is coffee that is traceable. You know the whole 9 yards of how the coffee was grown up until how it was brewed.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
And if you like that coffee, I would consider that specialty coffee.
If I can tell my consumer how the coffee traveled from being a cherry to how you're brewing it in the cup, and the way you're brewing it in the cup, for me is special, right? That journey. Similar to what wine is to a lot of people.
Not only scoring doesn't matter. If you have some batch, it may score on one day. So 1 year you may get 8 above 8, but how you process it, what are the care you are taking for the bean to reaching to an end customer is very important. For example, we have 550 acres of land. We made 5 acres each block. Okay, why we made? To trace it back. For example, one day when he goes to harvest 5 acres of that crop, we call it as a lot number 1. So not only that, simply he will go and he will not pick it. We check the bricks readings, we check the fermentation records, we keep, once coffee comes here, how much kg from that lot, and lot of work we do. When we ferment it, we check the fermentation time, water TDS, total fermentation, pH at the fermentation level, then we wash it, then we dry it. In drying, we take care of 5 to 6 parameters. So temperature, we take morning, afternoon and night. Then we take the air temperature, relative humidity, I showed you, right? So relative humidity and air velocity, how much it is traveling. Then we calculate, then we make the thickness of the, how much we have to make the thickness for drying. Then these are all the parameters, then you say it's a specialty coffee.
But especially if you're playing around in India with specialty coffee, I'm not so sure you can always get the right cupping scores for a lot of the different coffees. So for me, specialty coffee is a coffee that's it's more than just a coffee. It's for me, it's a culture. It's the kind of coffee that where the whole process from the farm to the cup is visible to the customer, and it's brought to the table as a story along with the coffee. The whole story is served to the customer rather than just a cup of coffee.
The consumer actually does not care whether the coffee is scored 80 or 95 or 100 or 60, right? What they really care about is like being able to experience something different in terms of coffee. and being able to really find what they would enjoy.
So do you think, or why do you think this has been a big misconception with the layman or the common public?
Especially because it's simply because at the point of where the knowledge is shared, right? These coffee shops. So when these coffee shops themselves have no clue as to why they're getting into it.
Correct.
Right? So majority of the business in the market is happening because hey, he's doing it, let me do it as well.
Correct.
But not trying to find out why is he doing that. So I wouldn't take names, but then a couple of leading brands came to the country, started the business, and then they showed the market what alternate brewing is, why should we consume the same coffee in an alternate brewing method, how does the flavor change when the same coffee is put in an espresso machine over a pour over a full immersion method or whatever. So somebody showed that, and then people did not understand the logic behind it. They just said, okay, he's pouring it in a cone-shaped thing, let me do the same. Right? Correct. So that's when it becomes bad for the consumer.
Correct.
He says a guy who's not exposed to specialty coffee would go down, drink that coffee and say, hey, this is nothing special. I don't like it. I rather stick to my Americano if it was black coffees.
You know, I think it's not so much about being made complicated. I think it's more that I don't think customers were taken on the same journey as elsewhere in the world, because it wasn't a gradual growth. You know, like
Correct.
okay, suddenly from Nescafe and South Indian filter coffee with the blue Tokai coming in, and suddenly everybody was talking estates and varietals and flavor profiles, flavor notes. I mean, people are talking about it, but I don't know how many people really understand the basis of it and why it's needed. It's I don't think it was ever developed as a language to communicate. It was almost like words are being thrown around and people don't really
Are getting what it is.
Yeah,
They're not
like-
comprehending it.
yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
okay.
So I think that's been the focus in the last couple of years, that how do we understand what the consumer wants, right? Because I think frankly there are many coffees out there that might score really high and might be considered to be great coffees in the specialty coffee world. But will the consumer really like it? Right? Will the patron really enjoy that cup of coffee here in India, or in Bangalore, or in Ranagar? I think what's interesting is that like every neighborhood, every city just prefers everyone has a very specific palate when it comes to beverage and food.
So for us, that's one of the key things here actually at G-Shot, that when customers come here, we just don't want to throw information at them. We ask them stuff like, okay, so how do you make your coffee? And then if you make your coffee this way, you know, this is the kind of grind you should use. We are really big on trying to tell people how to do it in a way where they can get the maximum out of the coffee that we are serving them or selling them. And then, you know, we love it when they come back and have a conversation with us and say, okay, you know, that coffee was really acidic. And, you know, when it comes from someone who doesn't really come from the coffee world, it makes me happy. You know, it makes me feel like, okay, this guy can figure out what an acidic coffee is versus a non-acidic coffee. When people are talking about these things on their own, it makes me happy.
Because at the end of the day, I think what the mission really is for everyone that I know of specialty coffee that I've heard talk, you know, in depth about why they started or why they got into this. It's really to improve the quality of the coffee that is being produced at the origin, and also help the farmer to get a fair price for what they grow and how much effort that they're putting into their farms, right? And I think what people are understanding over a period of time is that maybe it will be difficult to help these farmers or even be able to showcase these great coffees to so many people if you only tell them that it can be done using a pour.
Correct.
And it can only be done if you pay $5 for this pour over. Right?
Correct.
The idea is that if you can bring that cost down, or if you can increase the accessibility by brewing the same coffee in different ways, which does not compromise on the quality, but it makes it more accessible. So we see these guys have started doing a lot more instant coffees that are just much better, right? And it starts from just selecting green beans that they will select for a great pour.
Correct.
So it's we're really seeing the movement going towards that, right? And it's really around accessibility to connect farmers to, again, consumers, but at the same time, how do you do it in a manner where you're able to do it for a lot more people, instead of trying to say that, oh, only because you care about it so much and only because you're willing to spend so much money, or only because you're willing to go to a certain place would you be able to have.
Okay.
I've always pondered on this word speciality, and I'm always very scared to use the word. I would only say commercial coffee is special coffee. Commercial coffee is coffee which may have an off note in it, which may be dull and flat, maybe with no mouthfeel in it, something which you just sip and probably spit out. But if you talk of a special coffee, it's something which stands out, which gives a lingering note in your palate. It makes you recall those notes, and it makes you feel happy. I mean, at the end of it all, what do you want from a cup of coffee? You want to be stimulated, you want to be energized, you want to feel happy at the end of the day. I always look forward to my morning cup of coffee over here. I never drink coffee at home.
Okay.
But I just love my coffee here in the morning. It's a black cup of black coffee, and people look at me and say, how can you drink it black? I said, how can you drink it with milk and sugar? So it's all just a question of preference. Why I referred to a black coffee or a coffee with milk and sugar is what appeals to you as a drinker of coffee. So when I say something is specialty or special, it is to that person who drinks that cup. It is for him to describe it as specialty.
Understanding what specialty coffee is means different to a lot of different people. For a trader, it might be all about quality. For a farmer, it might all about the care. But for a drinker, it might just be that good sip of coffee. When compared to the other coffee drinking nations, coffee drinkers' growth in India has been very quick. In the northern part of India, people usually start their journey of coffee with instant coffee, whereas in the southern part, mostly it is a filter coffee. Rarely does anyone start with a V60 pour over or an espresso, let alone specialty coffee. But the change from instant to freshly brewed coffee is quite evident. But is instant coffee a good way to dip your toes into the world of coffee? Or would it be a big mistake? Let's find out what the people from the industry have to say.
What is your take on instant coffee? Well,
instant coffee has made people lazy.
It's convenient.
we grow up knowing that instant coffee is the coffee.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's, I don't know, I'm trying to be politically correct, but it's not coffee.
Okay. So what is it?
It's coffee that was brewed long ago and has preservatives.
Okay.
Every instant coffee tastes or smells the same. So that's not, it's like, it's something, it's the product, right? But it's not coffee.
So I don't have anything against instant coffee. It's just about flavor.
Okay.
Most instant coffee tastes like crap.
Correct.
So that's why I don't like instant coffee. It's not anything about the idea of the being soluble in water. It's just that it doesn't taste very good.
A couple of years back, at times now when I think about it, life used to be so easy.
Yeah.
Right? It's just one packet, open it, and then there your cup is ready.
Yeah.
And today, as you saw, pick out the fresh beans. But yeah, no complaints because there is definitely a whole lot of difference between roadside fried rice and authentic biryani. Right? If in the Indian context, if you can understand that, I think that's how I would like to compare.
I feel the technology is excellent. We have been seeing it in bad light only for one reason, because so far instant coffee, what goes into instant coffee is the most, the lowest quality of coffee, and there's no innovation in terms of making anything out of that. It's still projected in India as it's the coffee for no nonsense, who just want to have a cup of coffee, not think about the taste also. Some little bit of some aroma comes and some taste comes, and it's convenient. It's instant.
Instant coffee या South का cotton coffee क्या?
Cotton coffee.
Cotton coffee. Instant coffee नहीं अच्छा लगता है. नहीं अच्छा लगता है. होटल में तो वही पीते हो.
Because there's no other alternative.
अच्छा नहीं तो नहीं पसंद है आपको?
नहीं.
The middle class family, and imagine if we want a person to enjoy 2 cups of coffee per day, 150 each, 300 rupee per day, right?
Amount.
That's a huge amount. 300 just in 10 days, you are like spending 3,000 on a good cup of coffee.
People have jobs to do. Drinking coffee is not their job. So they're, how do we make as an industry, and I feel instant coffee batching very silly, to be very frank. There is coffee for every segment.
Correct.
So the thing is to be ethical in the point of saying, okay, this is what this product is about. If a consumer wants to take it, it is their choice. It is their choice.
देखा जाए तो कॉफ़ी एक सीड से बना है और सीड बहुत हेल्दी होता है क्योंकि एम्ब्रियो के लिए जितने न्यूट्रिएंट्स चाहिए होते हैं वो सीड में डले होते हैं और ये जो प्रोसेस होता है उसमें से सारे न्यूट्रिशन कम हो जाता है और जो कुछ बचा हुआ होता है वो हमें इंस्टेंट कॉफ़ी मिलता है तो न्यूट्रिशन वाइज ऑल्सो इट्स एवरेज अनदर थिंग फ्लेवर वाइज ऑल्सो इट्स एवरेज बिकॉज प्रोसेसिंग में उसका अरोमा लॉस होता है जो ग्रेड्स यूज होते हैं वो उसमें से कम फ्लेवर्स आते हैं सो उनको वो भी आर्टिफिशियली डालने पड़ते हैं फ्लेवर्स.
It's like, yeah, everything has a role to play. It's good, man. I mean, when somebody has bad coffee, that I can come and say, hey, listen, take a good coffee. But if they have not had any coffee, then me going and saying, oh, hey, listen, I have nano lot, micro lot, direct trade, fair trade. What are we doing? So there is a stepping stone to everything. And where are we introduced to coffee? Not everybody gets introduced at home. College, canteen. What is getting served? Because it's convenient. Cost has to be controlled. You can't expect them to go put an automated machine. No?
Correct.
So, yeah, it's good.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I used to have a very strong opinion about it because the only instant coffees that I had tried were Brew, Nescafe, Folgers, Maxwell, etc. Right? But being so lucky to be able to go to the last couple of World Coffee events, my idea of what instant coffee can be has completely changed. Right? I've had instant coffees that tasted much better than a lot of like these really crafty pour-overs that I've tried in really hipster coffee shops.
Do you think instant coffee could be made better?
I mean, it is. You see companies like Sudden in the US, and there's a few in...
Stumptown and Blue Bottle also.
Yeah, there's a few in Europe as well. Mm-hmm. It still does have a funny taste.
Correct.
I mean, obviously it's much better than like a Nescafe or something like that.
Correct.
But there is this kind of instant-y flavor associated with it.
It's just kind of the artificial...
Yeah, it has a little bit of artificial flavor, but then it's a trade-off for convenience versus taste in that sense.
Have you ever been compared to an instant coffee company or something?
I think it's the biggest comparison that we've always had, and
it's the one question we're bombarded with no matter where we go.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, what is isme aur isme kya farak hai? Why? How are you different from Nescafe?
Correct.
That's the number one question we get.
Okay.
So I feel it's just it's because it's so set in, people who drink coffee here, especially in North India, it's just Nescafe is the way we've been brought up.
Correct.
Cold coffee is something I've been drinking since I was a kid.
Correct.
Milk, sugar, ice cubes, that's it.
Yeah. Most of us have had Nescafe at some point of time.
Yeah.
And that's how our story of coffee has started with.
Yeah.
Whether we later on like it or not, but then that's how we started.
So now we made this clear distinction. We are not instant coffee instantly. So we do provide you coffee instantly, but it's a freshly brewed cup of coffee. It's not an instant coffee product everywhere.
Nice.
So everywhere now you start seeing that tagline, you see that on our branding. Yeah, not
instant coffee.
Coffee
instantly.
Yeah.
That's a very interesting way to promote a solution like yours.
You see the bubbles here?
Yes.
These bubbles are showing you that this coffee is fresh. So all these bubbles right here on top.
So this is what the bloom you were talking about, yeah.
Correct. The current scenario of, let's say, coffee in general, not even just specialty coffee, instant coffee or flavored instant coffee beverages, wherein, yesterday we were in the flight and we ordered this cold coffee, from a particular company that was there on the flight. And it had boldly written 100% Arabica, sourced from Chennai, So that is like a marketing strategy. People are, this is, good coffee and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And on the other side, when you turn around and look at the ingredients, it said, out of the 100% of what the beverage is, 1% is soluble coffee, an X% of coffee essence, then an X percentage of milk solids or this preservative, that preservative. And that is so delusional, And so in this market scenario wherein, majority of the beverages are taken by instant and flavored instant drinks, how do you think players like yourself, and not just specialty, leave the specialty, just yourself who are trying to promote coffee, how do you think you guys or players like you should work towards?
One is none of our packaging or anything is delusional at all, like you said. When we say it's 100% coffee, it's 100% coffee and nothing else. It's all 100% coffee and nothing else. So any of these bags that you pick up, once they say that there is 100% coffee in it, it is 100% coffee.
There is a certain amount of effort which is required to do specialty. Whether it is grinding, brewing. Are everybody going to do it? No. Instant coffee is still selling coffee. Is it bad coffee? Maybe, yes. But it's still introducing people to coffee. That's the first step. So everything has a role to play. The point comes is how much of influence it does. The problem comes is by tasting a bad coffee, if you start perceiving this is all coffees, that becomes a challenge. Hence, you're trying to always create. So, to say instant coffee is just a start, but it's not all of it. Okay? The reason I'm coming is more of a relation. Every country has a big chain which introduces the cafe culture. That does a base job. I do no names taken.
No.
But if you take the biggest chains of coffee, Starbucks, Costas, McCafe, and India CCD, they had a role to play. Very, very, very important.
Definitely.
What did they do? They took a cup which was priced at 10 rupees and made people willing to pay 100.
Correct.
It is because of that we are saying let's pay 250.
Correct.
It is because of that today somebody is able to sell a cup at 4 grand.
Correct.
And we know what we're talking about.
Correct.
The fact that somebody could dare to do it is based on somebody's efforts.
Correct.
So everybody is required. Now that being said, there are some good instant coffees supposedly coming through where you're using single estate, micro lot, doing it and moving off a faster sales and people start using. So it depends on whose perspective you look at it. I feel instant is good because you're still introducing coffee for people, and then it is our job to figure out what to.
Correct. So it's a stepping stone to something more. Correct. And in the end, it's all about making a whole wide country drink more coffee.
Because the growth in the commercial side in India is only from instant.
Correct.
It's not from filter.
Correct.
The traditional method of, if you look at the numbers, are not encouraging. It's not grown. But instant is what is kicking off this whole thing. Correct. So, especially in a country like us, yes, instant is doing its job. Let them do the job. So is it globally. This is not an Indian phenomenon.
Correct.
Globally, there's a lot of instant being consumed.
Correct.
And it's good.
I don't think they're wrong or we're right, or we're wrong and they're right. It's like some people write Harley Davidsons, the other people write Triumphs. None of them are bad. We're all building the culture.
Is instant coffee as bad as some people make it to be? Or can it be kept on the same shelf as the artisan coffee specially shipped to you from your roaster? Regardless, it plays a huge role in our country's coffee culture, its history, and most importantly, in matters relating to the consumption and the sale of coffee. While we can constantly debate about which coffee is better and continue our search for that good cup of coffee, there is someone blending behind the counter, engulfed in that aroma of the beans. They are the unsung warriors in the world of specialty coffee. In the Italian language, the word barista literally translates to a bartender, a man who serves multiple drinks. In many parts of the world, the word barista is used in a little more conservative fashion and happens to be someone who specializes in serving coffee. Maybe a barista is not seen in the same lens as one sees a doctor. But in many coffee drinking countries, the barista is a respected profession. How is this role treated in India? Let's find out.
I can't emphasize enough on how important barista is, because without a good barista, the industry does not exist at all, right? Because these are the only guys that communicate with the end consumer.
Correct.
Right? Who's paying all our bills, the planters' bills, the roasters' bills, the stockist and the barista and everybody's bills, which is the end consumer. So the point of contact for the end consumer are baristas who serve with a smile, talk about the coffee passionately, and most importantly, brew it so passionately. So I see that in the whole supply chain, the barista's job is the most important.
If you get the best coffee in the world, and if the barista is not grinding it properly, or brewing it properly, not following the procedure properly, you will just screw it up. Correct. So what's the use of having an expensive or the best coffee in the world?
Correct.
Yeah.
I think it's very important.
Very, very important.
As important it is, from how important it is to source the right beans or get it roasted rightly. And if it is not handled well, which is what the barista's craft is all about, or not presented well enough to the customer, so that towards all the farmers and the roasters, hard work is there in your hands to be, waiting to be made justice to.
Correct.
So that's the way that we look at things.
Correct.
So if things are not done right there, then nobody gets. All your effort is lost.
Probably manual pours are one of the things that's changing the area.
You visibly see a lot of things.
You see effort going into it. And even the new wave, third wave of coffee is getting barista to not just press one button and do. There's more. Even when they're making cappuccino, they're doing more than one thing. Earlier we just press one button for a cappuccino and the machine will serve espresso and then get another from other place. It will just put the milk there, froth it and put it on top. Whereas here you actually even see the barista doing the latte art. And also maybe the spaces are laid out, you are more exposed to what the barista is doing. And whereas earlier the idea about coffee shop was you go and sit in your place, the order is taken, once it's ready, it's served at your place. You're not watching the person.
How do you sell your coffee? Like, it's not just writing a fancy thing, this coffee from Kenya. That coffee from Kenya may not be good enough, and even if it is good enough, you're not doing a good job with it. So, communication, trying to tell customer what to expect, and trying to read a customer's mind, what exactly they're looking for. If a guy is tired and he just says, okay, I just want an espresso, and you are trying to tell him, giving him gyan, he's had enough, he might have had a fight with his wife and he won't separate. So barista is that final person who's the interface of specialty coffee. He is very, very important person.
What I think the role of barista is, there are three parts. One, the first part is, and the most important part is the middle one, which is the brewing. Okay. Brewing it right so that you get the best out of the coffee, and so that the customer can appreciate it. Another is the story and telling what the coffee is. Because if the barista's charm doesn't do it to the customer, sometimes you may have the best cup in your hand, but you completely don't realize it because you're not paying attention to it. So the barista has a big responsibility of bringing that attention, and he's the one who slowly converts one by one, makes people more passionate about coffee. He has the key to that. So that is the second part, front end part, and then the middle part is the brewing. And the part behind it is he also has a greater responsibility in giving feedback. See, it's not to assume that everything has happened perfect till that stage. So there could be a feedback about the roasting. I sent something like this. So because that's why in our cafe we would always advise baristas to first taste the coffee every day, because that's when you get to know, has something gone wrong in this batch?
Nice.
And it could be also even this year's harvest or something like that. So this feedback also lies over there. Correct.
But do you think that respect is given to the baristas in India?
No, not at all.
I know you said no, but why do you think no?
Because of coffee industry itself. Yeah, there are like competitions happening. Barista का competition, which is like full of politics.
Okay.
जब खेत ही खुद फल नहीं उगा सकता है तो फिर दूसरे क्या खाएंगे उसको, करेक्ट? ठीक है, उसको वहीं से रिस्पेक्ट नहीं मिलती है, देन वो कहाँ से उसको कोई और इज्जत भी देगा?
Do you think in India we give enough respect to this?
I think, see, from
a coffee community point of view.
No, see, I think with the current changing scenario, we've seeing things differently. Earlier, I would say no, definitely not. So I think, the way that at our cafe, when we this is what we tell our baristas, is that, you're like a bartender. You're building a relationship with your customer. Think of it as, okay, there's on one side, you're also, this is your craft. So you have all these different coffees. So how do you, understanding your customer's palate, how you put these things together to give him what he likes is something that you will have to, think. And so that is where we believe that a lot of training is needed, a lot of, because the minute learning stops, everything stops there.
As a barista, do you think in India we get enough respect for a barista? No. Why not?
People just think we are chai walas.
Okay.
That's the first thing I want to straight up say.
Okay.
The respect that I saw in Australia when I was standing outside before the championships, that was next level.
Okay.
People wanted to know my journey. People wanted to know what I've been doing behind the scenes, which does not happen in India. So that was the change that I saw.
I think the first thing that we really focused on was that how do you change the perception of what a barista means in India.
Correct.
Because you again have to think about we're in a very different market where coffee made through an espresso machine itself is not being consumed by a lot of people. So the first goal for us was that how do you make a person who's standing behind this espresso machine feel special about why it matters what they do. Right? I mean, it's very common that that even today, like a lot of places where people don't know about this movement of they treat people who make coffee as if it's just nothing, right? I mean, it's still looked down upon. A lot of people make comments like, oh, you just make coffee, right? I mean, because also people don't know that it takes so much effort.
Correct.
Because they've only been exposed to making instant coffee.
Correct. Do you think more places like Puttakai coming up has really improved the conditions of how people look at baristas?
I mean, I would say to some extent, I think there's still a long way to go. I think just with service industry jobs and everywhere, they're sort of undervalued, and especially baristas in India for a long time, it was felt that, okay, I have this, couple lakhs equipment, so anybody can press the button and make coffee.
Correct.
And they would have sort of, people whose jobs were not to make coffee. It would just be that you're a server or you're involved in the kitchen, and then when the coffee order comes, you're expected to make the coffee. So I think now there's a greater appreciation for, actually there is some skill involved, training is required, and it's not so simple.
A barista is more than just a person behind the counter making your coffee. In fact, they are an integral part of the entire coffee chain. They wear many hats. They are the salesperson, the face of your brand, the relationship manager, the customer success manager, and an educator who represents coffee in their own way. The status quo is changing. Maybe there's a long way to go, but slowly everyone is understanding that being a barista is much more than pressing a button on the machine. Now, you don't have to be a barista to know your coffee. The basics of understanding your cup of joe is to get into the details of it. That is, to understand the beans that go into it. If one might even say, coffee beans are well traveled. In fact, it is a topic that can be a movie on its own. As coffee migrated from one country to another, different species and varieties of the beans came about around the world. Two of the most famous bean species that most of you might know are Robusta and Arabica. But unfortunately, they are not treated equally. For years now, in the western parts of the world, Arabica is known to be the bearer of a better coffee. It is also more difficult to grow out of the two, hence having a higher price tag than the Robusta beans. But are Robusta beans really that bad? Are we following the herd when it comes to our preferences with the beans? Or could it be true that Arabica is in fact better than Robusta?
To people when they ask me what's the best coffee or what should I choose and all of these things. So I always tell them beauty is in the beholder's eye, right? So a person who likes a Robusta coffee would never like a Arabica coffee, right? I still hold, even though I know South Indian filter coffee is over extracted, really dark, coffee, leave aside the chicory bit of it. But if you just see normal South Indian filters, a lot of Robusta, 80-90% Robusta.
Robusta straight on? No. I would be very honest. I have tried, I have tasted and everything. Arabica certainly is better. Now, better is what for you? That is the important thing. If you are looking for just somebody who is, again, the connotation is that same thing. If you are looking for your evening fix with a quarter, or you want to have a single malt or something. So it's, again, that thing. What's the need? What customer needs? If he needs that evening fix, Robusta is there. You add some sugar to it, you add some milk to it. Like our, so you can have a very fantastic South Indian filter coffee with Robusta. So it depends how you're consuming your coffee. But if you talk to me that you're having it straight on as a brewed coffee, Arabica, no doubt about that.
Again, it's a matter of personal choice, right? I think we've met a lot of people throughout our journey who prefer their coffees in a very specific manner, and that's specific to their liking. So, I mean, I've met someone who has a specific blend that they enjoy, which has 20% Indian Robusta. Some of it is Ethiopian coffee, and some of it is coffee from Brazil. And they get it roasted by someone in Australia by a specific roaster, and it goes to them in Singapore every week.
Wow.
So it gets roasted every week and gets sent out to them in small quantities every week.
Wow.
Right? And they like 20% Robusta, a particular Robusta from India. Right? So I think, of course, I think Arabica and Robusta are just like so different in terms of how they taste. We particularly enjoy, we've enjoyed Arabica for its very smooth taste, its complexity, its acidity. But I think we've never looked down upon Robusta. We've never said that, oh, this is never going to taste good.
Correct.
Right? I think so. I don't think we have strong opinions about any one of them. I think again, the cup of coffee has to be delicious.
I think I always feel there should be a balance between the two, because Robusta being a plant, it's going by its name, it's very robust. So it's easy on the farmer. It's not too dependent on the external conditions that it varies too much. And in today's market also it demands a fair price, which is quite sustainable. So Robusta is kind of sustainable that way, and that's why I appreciate it. And there are other positives also, is that because it's robust, there's not much of
the cost of production is a lot lesser.
Also is less. Let's say even disease, pests, attacks are less. So if these are less use of pesticides, disease, pest management and all that also. So it's more purer that way.
So whenever somebody asks me also about Arabica, Robusta, I always ask them, what mango do you like?
Yeah.
Right. So I like Totapuri, somebody likes Alfonso, somebody likes Langda, I don't know. Everybody has a different choice, right? We never say this is the real mango. We just say this is one of the mangoes, I like this. Why can't we treat Robustas and Arabica just like two different species? Right? Oh, you like this? Okay, good. Why does it have to be that, Arabica is the only one? Correct? Do you agree with me?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And when I spoke to a few farmers, let's say, what they said was, at some given point in the country, I don't know if it's right or not, there were people who wanted to sell Arabica and they did not have Robusta. And they started marketing it as this is the real coffee. But I want to believe that. But then if you look at the global trend also, most of the people use Arabica in specialty coffee. Sadly. Okay. And I don't think a lot of advancement has been done in the Robusta side of it. Like even if today, if we check out the SEA cupping spores, there is one for Arabica. There's still not a cupping spore technically available for Robusta. Correct. So when these things happen, now this we are talking very very technical aspect of it. But how do we pass on this information that Robusta is not necessarily bad? How do we do that?
No, CQI has a
fine cup, Robusta sheet, from CQI.
Correct.
But SCI cupping form still does not exist.
Yeah.
Correct? Yeah.
That's correct. So CQI still does that form R grading. There exists a course for Robustas. So I believe this is how it started off. Robustas are easier to grow, need less maintenance. They are more sturdy, can grow in lower altitudes.
Correct.
Right. So because it was easier to grow, cost of growing them was cheaper. Planters were okay to let go of Robustas at a cheaper price. Right. So that's when the downward spiral started. Because it was selling at a cheaper price, and obviously commercial plantations could churn it out at a much cheaper price than smaller plantations, the price kept dropping. And then since the price kept dropping of the Robustas, less and less care was taken in terms of quality of the Robustas. So there wasn't enough research done in terms of how can I make the Robusta more flavorful. But there was always interest in Arabicas because it took a lot of work to take care of the plants itself. So they said, okay, since we are taking care of the plants, let's increase the cup quality to make ends meet while growing an Arabica. If I grow better quality Arabica, I will get a better price. But since Robustas were always commercial and then it had dropped, so it was a vicious cycle. So the quality kept going down, and then not enough research was done on the Robustas, creating new species, creating species that varietals that can give you better cup quality. But with Arabica, this kept happening. So these were the differences. This is why both of them are viewed differently. But that soon will change.
क्या अराबिका और रोबस्टा सिर्फ प्रमोशन होता है अराबिका करेक्ट और फ्यूचर रोबस्टा ही है बिकॉज ऑफ ग्लोबल वार्मिंग बहुत सारे इश्यूज है प्राइसिंग पेस्ट डिजीज बहुत सारी चीज़ें हैं तो आगे जाके आपको अराबिका बहुत कम आएगा हर जगह से और आपको 100%
हमारा खुद का प्रोडक्शन पहले 70-30 था 70% अराबिका 30% रोबस्टा और मेरे ख्याल से लास्ट 2 या 4 साल में 60-40 हो गया है 60 इज अराबिका 40%
और ये हर जगह पे यही रेशो मतलब ग्लोबली आप अगर जाओगे तो जहाँ पे 100% अरेबिका था फिर वहाँ पे भी 20-30% रोबस्टा में कन्वर्ट होने लग गया है बिकॉज ऑफ द ग्लोबल वार्मिंग यील्ड रेशो पेस्ट एंड डिजीजेस क्योंकि रोबस्टा बहुत ही ज़्यादा स्ट्रांग है ये सब चीज़ों को लेके
You know, why are we making a direct comparison? You know, appreciate it for their unique coffees for sure. You know,
And
so
we make the best Robustas in the world.
exactly. So why bash the one thing that we're doing right?
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly the one thing which is not here.
Yeah, and then we say this is not us.
But do you feel like as planters, do you feel like I wouldn't say hurt, but do you feel bad or do you feel not right when somebody uprightly comes and says, I just don't like Robustas?
No, I think.
I mean, in ways it is offensive because we grow them.
Correct.
And we know it's not like there's no care for it.
Correct.
They are also equally cared, but they are different plants. I mean, they are robust in nature. So I think for a grower, it brings a good sustainability kind of.
See, if you look at it, you know, really, on plantation, on Indian plantation especially, you know, why we are like largely different from any other part of the world is because the way our ecosystem is built in the first place. So be it you're sustaining through Arabica or on a higher elevation you're sustaining through other fruits or you know, for instance pepper or cardamom, whatever, it is the biodiversity that we really have to think about in that space, you know.
With more knowledge on how coffee is processed and marketed, a slow revolution has been brewing with the Robusta at the forefront. Today, people are considering various factors like from climate change to post-processing techniques apart from simply believing one bean is better than the other. People have a better idea of fine Robusta, carving an identity for itself in the crowded coffee market. We can only hope this would be for the good. Let's move into a much more concentrated topic, the fair price. When you pay money in exchange for a good, how do you know that you have paid a fair price? Coffee is a complex commodity that gets exchanged many times before reaching your cup. How can a fair price be decided in such a case? And what exactly is fair price anyway? If we take the bookish explanation of fair price, it is the cost of goods sold added with a percentage of profit. But how fair is the definition when it doesn't consider factors like risk of crop failure, environmental challenges, experimentation risks, labor challenges, logistic mishaps, and other issues? So, what is the ideal C price and how do we get to it?
So yeah, what is your understanding or what is your take on fair price?
Having worked with planters, this has been my experience.
Okay.
Every plantation has different costs. Let's say if he's up in Baba Budan where trucks don't reach so easily, he doesn't have access to water so easily, he has to pump it from down the plantation up into all of his plantation, then his costs are different.
Okay.
So every planter has his own costs and also the process that he does.
Correct.
And how labor intensive is it.
Correct.
But what I have noticed is somewhere between 275 to 325 is where a cost of per kg clean coffee, green coffee is. This being an average, and some of the plantations it's much higher, and some of the commercial plantations it's a little lower. But this is sort of the average that I have noticed. I've done costings in plantations. 275 to 325 is what it costs. So,
which is still way above the C price that we know of.
Absolutely. It's nowhere close by to those
Correct.
prices.
Correct.
So I would, and given that if you are able to do a cup quality that is decent, any planter should be able to sell his coffees at this price.
Okay.
His green coffees at this price.
At least this price.
At least.
Okay.
Yeah. So I would say a buyer, when he goes down, the planter should have a clear costing sheet in front of him and say, hey, look, this is how much of NPK I used. This is how many times I've pruned my plantation. I invested in drip irrigation into my plantation. I dug up a new water source close by. So these are my costs, and this is how much it is costing me per acre, and this is the output I'm getting per acre, and that's why I'm pricing my coffee at this. I don't see why a buyer should not be willing to pay the price that the planter is incurring as a cost.
But we feel the farmers, growers' efforts are underappreciated, definitely. Yeah? Because there's too many variables that he needs to deal with. Nature and yields can vary heavily, and it's not. And technology is not integrated in such a way that you get everyday status of the plant's health, that you could take actions. Because I'm sure technology can be integrated, but then the cup of coffee is going to become that much more expensive.
Yeah.
So that's why farmers, there's a gap over there. Even though globally there is a very good voice that this is highlighted, we need to do, but then still we know the reality over there. There are problems. It's only that there is efforts being made, but it's not realized fully.
Yeah.
So I think recovering his, cost of production today, in today's market rates, even the cost of production also
Are not met.
So one is to recover that cost of production and then make a decent profit, because everyone has to profit. Only then
Then you're motivated to do, much
he's
more.
motivated to maintain the quality. He's motivated to improve the quality, make great coffees, experiment. These are all values which the customer, roaster, and everyone else in the supply chain will appreciate. But then he should enable himself. To enable himself, he has to, have a fair price.
Is it sometimes challenging for you to portray why you're charging what you're charging?
or the buyer comes to you, like, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, see, primarily we don't grow vast quantities. We are a very
Correct.
small farm. So we are not growing vast quantities of coffee. So whatever little quantity that we are growing, we want to make sure we take the best care of it and curate it the best way. And there is a price portion that's added to it.
Okay.
So that is what we charge our customers for.
Correct.
So sometimes there is a whole reason why it's charged this way, or maybe they have got another organic coffee from some other buyer at a cheaper price, and that sort of makes them question our genuineness.
Correct.
But we know what we do, and we know how hard we work to do it, and we know we do it pretty true to ourselves and the whole concept. So, so we just tell the buyer, I mean, this is what it is, and you know, like we're not. None of us are driving Ferraris or making a fancy lifestyle by growing coffee organically. So, the prices that we charge our customer are very fair. In fact, below what I think we should be charging anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, the industry has a very clear way that it changes from the grower to, I mean, if it's a direct thing, it's to the roaster. So he knows what price he's got it at, he knows his value addition, because he's running a business. Correct. See, growers don't run it like a business. Correct. I wish growers ran, coffee plantations like a business. It's more, not all of them. Yeah.
Not all of them. Not all of them. Majority of them.
Majority. If it was like a business, say you had a downturn in the market or some other issues, you try to correct it, and mostly it is you cut short something. Like say, for example, markets are bad on the cafe side. There are not much customers because in general the market sentiments are bad. And then you try to do something about it. You cut your costs, right? It's much easier here. But whereas growers don't do that. For them,
you can't do that there.
Are like their children. Correct. And you don't do it once. You don't take care of them once. It's very difficult
to revive them back again. It's literally like children.
The concept of fair price is even being challenged. I would say even some of the guys that speak, like there's a guy called Stacey Toos from Level Ground, and before I started Koinonia, I had actually sent him an email with like the vision of Koinonia that we wanted to build. And actually the day that I felt the most inspired to start this company and to jump and to dive was when he sent me an email back and he's like, this vision's great, like go for it. And he's done some TED Talks and stuff about hugging a farmer, and he goes to South America and Africa in a really sweet way about how he creates farming communities, how they do organic farming and some really good stuff. And I think they even put on their website how much is the cost of coffee they get, how much they sell it for per kg, and it's a really, really transparent system, which is amazing. So I think he even says, I don't take certification for fair trade because sometimes fair trade even call me to ask me how our systems are, So I'd say internationally that's being challenged. I would say from an India perspective, you have to look at how much is the farm being paid that you're sourcing from and how much are they paying their pickers and processors. So that's a really important perspective.
The first statement is that price is not an issue. You do the things right, and whatever you feel that your product is worth, you'll be surprised. I'll offer you more than that. And I have never I don't remember telling a farmer, okay, I won't buy at this price, I'll buy at this price. If you're offering, of course, if he just like that, he wants that, okay, that's you take coffee. No, not that case. But to be very honest, I have never bought a coffee. Say, for example, even when 3 years, 4 years back when I started, I never bought a coffee below 350 rupees a kg. So if you compare it with the price of green, then it's and now it is like way beyond that. So at our level, we certainly can make a difference. And that thing is that some farmers are waking up to this, not just by us. We are small buyers, like a roaster like me. But there are bigger roasters, and there are bigger roasters abroad who value that thing, who would if your work is right and your coffee is up to the standard, you would certainly get much more price than what the C prices are. So that, saying that, if now coming back to the small farmers in India, we still don't have like that, cooperative kind of structure which is there in Kenya or Rwanda where they're trying to,
Like we know how in most of the other coffee growing countries.
Yeah.
So now for this, just for this talk, let's assume the place in Ethiopia or Kenya, which is more popular in terms of providing coffee. For some reason, they're also always in the limelight.
Yeah.
So when a big roaster or when a very known roaster is talking to source coffee from such regions, they always have this practice now, in the recent times at least, where the roaster is helping out the grower.
Correct.
He pays up front for whatever the produce is, for whatever he's going to book it for.
Yeah.
And then he helps him in whatever help that the farmer needs.
Correct.
They work together, they get the produce, sell it out to the roaster.
Yeah.
Why don't we see a lot of those in India?
It's already happening. It's we are working with a planter farmer association. And when I say association, they have associated with each other, where the roaster has invested into the farm in terms of post-harvest processing equipment, and in return the farmer has assured a certain quality which is showing in the cup already. The roaster is really happy because he exclusively has the produce of that planter for the country, and the planter is happy because he's got an investment, he's gotten the know-how as to how to do these things.
So as a planter and a roaster, and now somebody at the brewing end as well, what is your take on how we call it globally as the fair trade?
To answer to you is like, see, if you're talking about from a certification perspective, there is a massive issue with it.
Okay.
This is something which is, even the fair trade will tell you.
Correct.
Because the process of certification takes so much of time. Correct. That the network is so long.
Correct.
So on an average, it is said, a guy who's buying a certified coffee from the big certification agency will get to know whether the final planter is paid in a period of 16 months to 24 months. They take that much time because it has to be collaborated, collated, and then put together. I'm doing my own bit to say was direct way. Let's not call it any fancy names. Certification is, from a planter's perspective, is a joke because there is a cost element to it. Somebody else coming auditing your estate, but see, it's more like, how do I put it? It's like a teacher coming and putting you through an exam, not really helping you.
Correct.
And saying if you pass, you get X amount, and that X amount is not worth the effort which you have put in.
Okay.
Okay. So you've got to use it as a base and then build on it. Right? So you get the certification to say, yes, we are doing the best practices in the world, but that is not enough. I'm also doing marketing on top of it to reach my coffees more and more and more.
Correct.
So we planned a new system. Now I'm working for that business plan. It's a single origin, single estate. Till now it was right. So we are extended to single origin, single estate, single block with unique processing. Like you are buyer.
So that is like a nano lot.
Yeah, nano lot. Like we are selling 5 acres of our area to you. Means selling is that that crop of that years will be converted in the name of you. Okay, that 5 acres block. Okay, and we give like menu. Like if you want naturals, we have like picha, grappa, this Oman processing. Like which one you want, we will process and give it. So you want peers like black honey, red honey, whatever you want, we are ready to do it. And wash coffees how you want. Like we don't want your processing methods. We have our own. Yeah, we are ready. So we are creating the future market in the estate level.
Correct. That is only possible if you.
Exactly, and also for a roaster, that also helps you to trace it back from that block. Even I'm not talking about the estate. If I mix all 550 acres, even each block tastes differently. Correct? You agree, right? Coffee is so unique. So that block also you can trace it back, and you will get a real specialty coffee like in that block. That also helps you about traceability. We have counted how much plant in that block, what the fertilizer we are giving, what the irrigation methods we are following. Everything we have data. All data is transferable for you.
Do you think farmers in India are also benefiting because
I assume they're getting a better price from the commodity coffee.
Yeah, 100%, 100%, yeah.
And
I don't know when I last negotiated with the farmer. I negotiate with everyone else.
that is really good. That people are also.
But our quantities are so less. I don't know how much impact it makes. But typically, from conversations I've learned,
it's a start.
It's a start. Yeah. From conversations I've learned that, what they would get abroad, they're getting here, so they're much happier.
Really? Nice.
Yeah, but I think, again, if you're at the commodity, no, right? If you're in the commodity market, the price is at an unsustainably low level.
Correct.
In the specialty market, the one challenge is it's a global market. So then the scores really matter a lot. So if you're producing a 80, 81, then your premium is probably not going to be so high because there's lots of producers across the world who are at that same 80, 81.
Okay.
It's really only once you get into like higher 80s that then you can command a large premium for your coffee. And there's not so many estates in India who are at that level right now.
Whether prices should be set only based on scores or based on other attributes is a discussion beyond this movie. But one thing is for certain, that fairly traded coffee is what we should be looking out for. Not necessarily the stamp of fair trade on it, something that is traded in the right way at all the checkpoints along the value chain of coffee. With the awareness of what goes into Indian specialty coffee slowly brewing, we can still see that the definitions around it are a bit smudged. It would be right to say that Indian coffee has been viewed differently from what it is, at least in the global sphere. Why is it that Indian coffee has a specific stereotypical image outside India and to an extent even viewed differently within India as well? Also, why is it that the global specialty coffee consuming community seldom relates to Indian coffee as specialty or top graded coffee?
और सबसे बेसिकली हम लोग इंडियंस लाइक वी आर फॉर्चुनेट कि इंडिया में कॉफ़ी होता है और अनफॉर्चुनेटली वो एक ही रीजन में होता है क्योंकि उसका रीज़न है कि आप इक्वेटर का बेल्ट अगर लोगे तो 23 डिग्री नॉर्थ 23 डिग्री साउथ वो आपको कॉफ़ी बेल्ट है तो लकीली हमारा जो पार्ट है कुछ पार्ट इंडिया का वो बेल्ट में आता है इसलिए वहाँ पे कॉफ़ी होता है और ब्रिटिशर्स ने ये कॉफ़ी कल्चर स्टार्ट किया इंडिया में प्लांटेशन करके तो शुरू से ही ये प्रीमियम प्रोडक्ट हो चुका है तो कॉफ़ी को हमेशा प्रीमियम ही देखा जाता है इसी वजह से वो जिस तरह से स्प्रेड होना चाहिए था जैसे हम बाकी कंट्रीज़ में देखते हैं वियतनाम में देखते हैं या हमारे बाकी एशियन कंट्रीज़ में देखते हैं उस तरह से वो इंडिया में स्प्रेड नहीं हुआ वो आज भी आप अगर कॉफ़ी पीने जाते हो तो प्रीमियम प्रोडक्ट ही कंसिडर होता है वेयर एज चाय आप उसको एक इकोनॉमिक प्रोडक्ट है आपको हर जगह पे अवेलेबिलिटी है हालांकि वो आपका ट्रेडिशनल प्रोडक्ट नहीं है इंडिया में पहले कॉफ़ी था फिर चाय आया
The position in which we are placed in is exciting because the growth percentage is one of the highest in the world in terms of specialty. So from a statistical point of view, it's exciting. But in terms of mathematically, the numbers are not encouraging. So you've got to differentiate both. But today is the right day to be here. Now, why I'm telling you is I've been in this industry since 2005. What I saw there to now, in the last decade, is a monumental change. There is want for it. That is the first thing. Any product in India or any country takes a life cycle to get readjusted. I see a lot of palate change.
In India, the consumption of specialty coffee has definitely increased. This is what everybody's been saying. But why is it that at a global level, Indian coffee, specialty coffee, is not recognized?
I think, I don't know, maybe it's very similar to any
craft culture, even if you look at beers for that matter, you get great craft beers around the world, but they're never going to be as popular as, say, any, mainstream brand like, say, Budweiser or Heineken or any of those. Maybe the same applies here, where, we have a lot of cafes doing great specialty coffees, but the brand in itself is never going to be as known as, say, a Lavazza or an Haley or whichever, other mainstream, or maybe a chain like Starbucks.
So some people walk into our outlet and they're like, I don't want to try Indian coffee, I only want international coffee. And we're like, sure, but what if I also give you a cup of Indian coffee to try on the side? So they've been really, have a emotionally, like they're probably emotionally scarred from Indian coffee, had really, really bad experiences. So that's a great way to bridge them, be like, we have great international coffee, which you taste, and then when you try Indian coffee, look where it compares, and we've had some really, really great, appreciative customers come up and say, hey, the Indian coffee was really good, I was really, really surprised. So I think that's amazing.
Do you think Indian coffee outside India is stereotyped, that it is going to be a very earthy flavor coffee?
No, it's wrong, right? So that's what, when I was telling about earthy note, like smoky burnt notes are the hallmark of Indian coffee. That's wrong. So always we can do it in processing. You taste our cup of coffees, how it was tasting, whether it was tasting muddy or earthy or smoky, you got it.
I like the flavor. So see,
No, that's what I'm saying. So the mindset is on the processing level.
Correct. But even in general, do you think outside India, in foreign people assume that Indian coffee is like this?
Yeah, because of we were concentrating on processing. See, the parameter why I'm stressing processing is to take care very good coffees about the plantation side. But we were not able to market it. Just we had to dump it to curing works. Because in specialty coffee you have to wait for rates to come. But our planters have, they'll bring money from bank loans. They have to pay back. So there's to put it. So in that processing, we were not concentrating. If you see our coffees, are shade-grown coffees.
Correct.
Very good juice you'll get. Like bricks readings, we are getting 18-20% in first round only. If you leave it will go up to 22% or 23%. That depends on that.
Which is very high for
Obviously,
very high
but we were not knowing about the processing.
Because the idea was to dump the coffee, get the C price, pay the loan, and the circle continues.
Continues. So this where like normal planter, like how many people are having end-to-end customers in India? They have only a few planters, right? They have their own marketing system. Like most of the planters, they go and they put it in curing works itself.
I think every country has taken their own time to get to this understanding of why there has to be extra care while producing coffee, right? I think in the last 4 to 5 years, we ourselves have seen such a big change of how many people now care about their coffees being processed in a particular manner, and it's just amazing, right? I think it's pretty remarkable. I think a lot of it has to do with having that exposure, and I think it's changing for sure. I've definitely seen more coffee shops actually getting in more Indian coffees. I think that perception's changing. I think the perception's always been that coffee from India is Robusta, it's great for espresso blends, or there are a couple of specialty coffees that India produces like the Monsoon Malabar or Kapi Royale that people want to look at.
But for some reason, so specialty coffee ideation or the image of specialty coffee in India has not changed or is almost inexistent.
I think it's going to take some time. It's happening. You do see some roasters abroad that do have Indian origin coffees, but I mean, you would also see that most of the roasters you go to abroad would have pretty much all the growing regions covered, but India is usually never there. But I think it's happening. It's a slow process. The harvest is also once a year, so it's a year-on-year process to improve cup quality. So it's getting there.
The distorted image of Indian coffee has been changing in recent times. Slowly, there are roasters abroad who are working with specialty Indian coffees and people looking into the Indian coffees beyond the stereotype of it being a Robusta or just a coffee with earthy flavor notes. While we build the right image for Indian specialty coffee, there is another concept that has been gaining a lot of traction for a while now. The conscious effort to reduce one's carbon footprint has led sustainability to take center stage. But what is it to really be sustainable? More than sustainability being just a trending hashtag. Is it even possible to be 100% sustainable? How is sustainability viewed throughout the coffee value chain instead of something that only planters need to be concerned with? Are we doing justice to sustainable ways of living and doing business, or are we simply being greenwashed?
Sustainability, in my eyes, sustainability means something which is having, again, not a negative impact on land or in the activity that you're doing. It has to be sustainable in the sense it just doesn't create a lot of waste. A system is there which is creating constantly a lot of waste with no use of the waste in the end. It's completely unsustainable. Obviously, it means like the use of fossil fuel that we do nowadays. I mean, I drive a car as well, so I am contributing to the waste cycle. But I am also trying to do something which can offset that waste cycle. I understand that we all live in the system. We all have to partake in the economy. Nobody can just live by themselves in the jungle and call themselves sustainable. That is not realistic.
Correct.
For me, being sustainable is about thriving. If I can make sustainable a thriving, take sustainable to thriving, that means I've done something right. And I think that would encourage more people to join the sustainable movement, more so. So for me, being sustainable is to be able to take care of the land, take care of my family, myself, and take care of all the people that are working in this project with us. So we have currently directly 4 to 8 families that work directly for us. And in seasonal, we have another 15 families that indirectly work with us. So if we all can, in this bubble, ecosystem bubble, if we can all survive and thrive, I think we've done a good job. Along with nature, obviously, along with the land we are on.
So currently, one of the most talked about subject in most of the industry, and now also into specialty coffee, is sustainability. At a roastery level or at a cafe level, what does sustainability mean to you?
Well, at a roastery level, we pay a fair price for coffees we buy. Of course, when it comes to an environmental impact, we try to use our grounds, or we encourage people to take them from us and use it for either making compost or, in whatever way they can use it. We also started buying cascara from farms, which goes back to the soil, but here they're getting some income out of it also, so we have cascara on our menu.
Nice.
Well, I would say that's a topic of this time, right from the plantation to the end result, as your question is, at the cafe level, how can we make it more sustainable? I think by, at least what I try to do is, while making a budget for these cafes, how can we still provide a good cup of coffee, and working in terms of the like collaborating with other roasters at a good price point, and I'm not saying like, hey, give us super great discount or something that will totally break it, because then that won't be a sustainable model for them. But understanding that overall, what can we do in order to support each other to make it more sustainable? I'm still, I would say that maybe I'm still trying to figure out what's the exact role we as consultants can play at the cafe level, because that still blows up my mind, understanding the entire system of it. So I would say that maybe I won't be able to answer that question right now, but that's something that we talk a lot. Yeah.
So my understanding, I wouldn't say my understanding, but my thought process with sustainability in the recent times has gone to a change wherein sustainability needs to be a verb and not a noun.
Yeah.
As opposed to, this is my personal thought. I don't know if you feel the same, but in the current scenario or the current scene in India, the word sustainability and organic has been abused a lot, which kind of offsets a lot of good things or positive things that people are doing to the best of the true knowledge for sustainability survival or for organic farming. But because of this abuse, people just loosely use this term very frequently without actually knowing what that means. Do you feel something like that?
Well, once movement becomes trendy, people will get on board, and a lot of people who have not sort of previously felt that way about that movement would also join in. And I believe that it's fine as long as it becomes a buzzword and everybody's talking about it is good.
Okay.
Using it loosely can be disadvantageous to the whole movement altogether, because they can use it to greenwash people, and there's a lot of greenwashing out there, which is, I think, a proper term when people use organic and sustainable to greenwash people.
Correct.
And consumers to buying their product.
Correct.
So yeah, there is like, or you can name your product eco, and it doesn't matter, it can
be whatever.
Yeah, whatever, but it's not eco in the end of the day, and people think it's eco and they'll buy it. So that is wrong. But that's up to the consumer, I believe, to sort of make those necessary questions, dig deep into the heart of the product, And it's about time now, man. Like, I think if people will not do that now, then when? Before it's too late, it's already too late.
Correct.
In a lot of sense. So we have to sort of dig deep into the products that we buy. Maybe coffee is one. Will you wake up with? Would you like to wake up with a nice cup of coffee every morning? So you're going to start your day on the right note, trying to see if your coffee is not just greenwash sustainable, but actually sustainable. Or farmers were doing something that might positively, already doing something that has a positive impact on land. Or are you willing to ask your farmer to do that extra bit?
Correct.
Provided you also have to do your own bit.
Correct.
So I think also there's other facet is that the green movement is a lot of it's supposed to be a purchase driven movement, in the sense that the consumer should also have a purchasing power, and that purchasing power should then dictate what the market trend should be.
Correct.
At the same time, the purchaser also has to make his own thing. It goes both ways. But
correct. There has been a new definition of sustainability that has been appearing over the horizon. In a way, sustainability is thriving to do the best with the available resources, keeping in mind the environment, profitability, business, and even time, and doing the best with consistency. Thriving is also about making other people thrive and bring about a huge change. This collective group of coffee-loving people is what we call community. Coffee is all about the community that surrounds it, within which it dwells. Every person in the coffee value chain is able to cope with the challenges only with the strength of this community. The specialty coffee community in India is still very young. This community has opened a breeding ground for secrecy in competition amidst the coexistence.
Do you think the specialty coffee community as such is very collaborative? As in, you can, when I say collaborative in your terms, it would be like, you talk to roasters or you talk to cafe chain owners or cafe owners, and then you're freely asking feedbacks and talking to them about something. May or may not be the same guy buying your machines, but at least you are at a terms where you can discuss things.
So I would say things are changing. There was a time when there were very few individuals and organizations which had good coffee knowledge and exposure to what's happening in the international community. There weren't many people traveling out. There weren't many people attending any good courses and knowing about coffee. And so knowledge was limited, and since it was limited, it was held at a very high premium.
Correct.
Things have changed again in the last 3 to 4 years. Lot more of the cafe owners, the community people are traveling abroad. They are learning about coffee, and even in India, the community is growing. Copy Machines tries to play a role of bringing the community together. We are uniquely positioned because through the various equipment that we have in our portfolio, right from the roaster to the grinders to the brewers, and through the trainings that we offer, that we are connected to almost the entire community.
Correct.
And so we feel it's extremely important for us to play this role of bringing the community together. So we do it in a small way through organizing coffee meetups, through organizing some contests around coffee where baristas come down and they display their skill. But there is a lot more to be done.
We'll talk about the coffee community in India. It's small. The specialty coffee community is even smaller. Do you think the specialty coffee community in India is very collaborative at this moment, wherein you can just pick up phone, talk to somebody else? I don't know.
No. I say yes or no. You could pick up the phone and talk to people. I just think the thing with the Indian coffee community is a lot of companies are funded by PE investors. And so companies need to meet their investors' expectations, and they also need to make sure that they are growing their company and so for whatever reasons, it's not as collaborative, which is also fair enough. That's how it works.
The quality of coffee somewhere here needs to go up a little.
Okay.
Because when compared to the trips, I've been on a couple of trips abroad, and I see that it's on a whole nother level there.
Okay.
So there's one aspect. I like the fact that Indian specialty coffee is still pretty chilled out when you compare to the other places. I like that about it. So, but if we can get that up, if we can get the quality
up a notch,
and yet not lose this chilled out vibe, it would be nice. Because here, since it's so nascent, people are still are extremely welcoming.
The community of, as you mentioned, is very small in terms of the number of people trying to do this. But we've seen a massive number of newcomers or new people who are joining this movement, right? And I think, we, to be honest, look at this movement of not trying to section off a certain segment of people and saying that, hey, this is the specialty coffee market and this is what I want to cater towards. Thankfully, I think our peers and everyone else is trying to educate people of what good coffee is versus bad coffee. And I think the idea is to get more people to have good coffee than saying that, oh, this is my set of people that I want to really serve coffee to, and trying to say that, oh, anyone else who walks into my door is not welcome.
Okay.
So I think in general, that is the trend that we've seen, which is like really great. I think.
अभी मैं कैफ़े की बात करूं कि वो लोग क्यों नहीं बताते एम्प्लॉयज़ को, बिकॉज कंपनीज आर फीलिंग इनसिक्योर फ्रॉम देयर एम्प्लॉयज़, क्योंकि ताकि ये खुद हमें आगे जाके कंपटीशन ना दे, विच इज़ वेरी रॉन्ग थिंग. Correct, which is very wrong thing.
If that is the case, then yes.
That is the only case. I can tell you, I can prove you this. This is the only case which is going on in India, which has to stop. People are not helpful in this industry. They actually don't want to teach other people like why this is happening. अगर किसी को रोस्टिंग खोलना है तो उन्हें कैसे हेल्प करें, उसके कोई नहीं बताता ये चीज़ें. ठीक है, चार्ज करना इज़ अ थिंग, या हाँ आप अपनी मेहनत करें, आप उसके लिए चार्ज करो, विच इज़ फेयर इनफ, बट हेल्पिंग इज़ अ डिफरेंट थिंग.
It is like that, and it should be like that. It should be, because ultimately, going back to my earlier point, passion and all is okay, but ultimately people have invested a lot of time and money to earn money and to grow their businesses, right? So to that extent, people are secretive. They should be. But as far as the coffee knowledge is concerned, I think that's where people are very friendly in sharing whatever knowledge people have. But going back to my initial point, I think as a community we need to do more to get rid of that.
The barrier.
The barrier, and actually the barrier is the snob part of things. Right, the coffee snob or whatever you want to call it, but you have to make coffee affordable, reachable to the tea drinkers and the instant coffee drinkers. Ultimately, that's what
everybody, right?
Everybody. Why not? I mean,
accessible.
Exactly.
Certain countries have made that mistake of saying that, oh, if you're not a coffee snob, you should not walk into my space, right? Correct. Or I only serve coffee in this particular manner. So people, I think in general, have realized what works for the Indian consumer. I think the bigger challenge that all of us need to work towards is that how do you make sure that your offering is bigger and you're able to educate a particular customer over a period of time to understand their coffee better. And then it's still up to them in terms of what they would like to consume. You can't really force anyone to have a French press. You can't really force a French press lover to have a frappe just because you have created a new flavor, right? So the idea is not to push a particular product or a particular kind of coffee to all consumers. I think the idea is to cater to all consumers, brew great cup of coffee, but also be able to talk to them and have a conversation instead of a one-way preach, right? Saying that, hey, this is what works.
Like this.
This is what it is, right? I think, and we've seen that's what people have done in general, which is great. I think.
बहुत ओपन नहीं है, मतलब वो एक है कि आप किसी को कोई रोस्टर के पास जाते हो, आप उनसे बात करते हो क्या मुझे एक रोस्टरी डालना है या मुझे करना है, तो सडनली उनका अप्रोच चेंज हो जाता है. आप बात करते हो फिर मतलब इतना आपको एजुकेशन इजीली अवेलेबल नहीं है, इन्फॉर्मेशन जो शेयरिंग होना चाहिए वो ओपन नहीं है, तो उसमें बहुत वो एक दिक्कत है मतलब अभी भी. बट आप जब बाहर जाते हो, आप जब लोगों से डिस्कस करते हो, आप किसी रोस्टर से मिलते हो, तो आपको पूरी तरह से उसका प्रोसेस समझाता है. ये कॉफ़ी कैसा है, ये क्या प्रोसेस है, ये किस तरह से रोस्ट किया गया है, क्यों ऐसा रोस्ट किया है उसने. बट आप जब इंडिया में किसी रोस्टर से मिलते हो तो वो इतना ओपन नहीं होता उस चीज़ को लेके, क्या उसने इसी को यही रोस्ट क्यों किया, या आप जब बात करते हो तो ये इश्यूज़ है. अगर हम लोग हमारा थोड़ा माइंड ओपन रख के कम्युनिटी को अगर डेवलप करें, लोगों को डेवलप करें, तो डेफिनेटली हम इंडियन स्पेशलिटी कॉफ़ी को बहुत ऊपर तक ले जा सकते हैं.
Mankind's affiliation with coffee goes back hundreds of years, and the people working in it have thrived to keep it up to date with simultaneously bringing the best and most varied flavors. India is a great market for coffee. With so much changing every day, be it the products, processes, consumer behavior, there is a huge opportunity in the Indian coffee landscape waiting to be brewed. Specialty coffee is slowly taking up defined shape and is spreading its roots across the continent. We can only hope that these changes today are the seeds for a revolution in the history of Indian coffee. Tracing through the map of India, especially in a sea, has taken us to the doors of some great minds who are helping shape the future of coffee in India. Together, let's amplify their voices and get India on the map of global coffee. So you each get just one shot at the next question. Okay.
Okay.
You have to describe in one word and only in one word what coffee is to you.
Alright, one word is only one word.
Coffee is life.
For me, it's just a good feeling.
I think it's just next to the breathing.
I'd say it's heritage.
Life.
Memories.
Passion.
Coffee, for a coffee lover, it's a love.
One word. And I would say flavor.
I would say comfort.
Coffee is life.
Coffee is soul.
To be very honest, I want to say a beverage. Yeah, so not getting too sentimental about it. Yeah. So it's a beverage. I would say it would be very cliche if I say it's curiosity, it is this, that. It's a beverage, and as an industry, you've got to make it better.
In Australia, we have this saying. It's called "you beaut." You beaut. You beaut. It actually means beauty. Beaut means beautiful.
You're asking a coffee farmer to explain coffee in one word. I mean, one day is what I need to have with a cup of coffee. It's life for me.
How would you describe what coffee is to you in just one word?